Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yance, and today I have a special interview with award-winning director Joe Lamb. He also has his own production company called Shining Light Pictures. He has directed numerous short films, including a film called Fugitive Zero, which has won numerous awards. And currently he is either in pre-production or filming his first feature film entitled The Fetus. Enjoy. Now, this is only part one. Stay tuned for part two. Okay, I have a special guest with me today. I have award-winning director, writer, and producer, Joe Lamb. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing excellent, Justin. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. So I've done a lot of research on you. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Simi Valley, California. I was born in Bangkok, Thailand, but came here when I was 3 years old. And it was considered the #1 safest city in the US for a long time.
Interesting. That's cool. That's cool. As I saw, you went to Royal High School, correct? Is that correct?
Yeah, you're going way back.
I told you, I did my research.
I went to both Simi High and Royal High.
Simi High, okay.
Yeah, all my friends decided we don't like Simi High, so we're all gonna go jump ship and go to Royal High, that's across the city. And yeah. I didn't want to be left behind, so I said, I have to go too.
That's so cool that you guys all decided to, switch schools. That's great. Were you always interested in film?
No, it was, the funny thing is, I just thought films just happened. Like, I didn't understand that someone actually people come together to make movies. And it wasn't until, and this is at Royal High, that I had a teacher, his name was Jim Hitt. And Mr. Hitt, I don't know why, but for some reason he was my English teacher, and he decided to show a movie called Citizen Kane. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, we get to watch a movie here? And from the moment it started, and it took 2 days because, the classes were, like 50 minutes per session, that we watched it over the course of 2 days, and I was blown away because the shots, the performances, and the way he moved the camera were flying through this gate. And I'm like, how did the camera go through the gate? I didn't understand that they pulled the gate away, and there were just so many transition shots, or like extreme low angles where he dug into the ground, the floor, to put the camera in the ground to have such an extreme camera angle that I was looking around at my classmates saying, don't you guys see what I see? This is amazing. But nobody else got it. And that was the moment I said, okay, I have to figure out how to do this. One day I'm going to be a movie director.
Wow. So your first baptism into film was probably one of the greatest films ever made, Citizen Kane. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, he's probably my favorite actor of the 1940s, the 1940s, the 1950s. Citizen Kane's 41. That's so great that it started with a classic like that, because that was such an innovative film at the time. Nobody had seen anything. And here we go all these years later, and you're seeing it as a student, and that inspired you to be a filmmaker. That's great. I mean, that's...
Yeah, it shook me to my core, to the point where I actually felt like if I became a movie director, I would have to do such a good job that I was afraid of failing. And so instead of pursuing that directly out of high school, I decided to go into architecture school all the way in Georgia, across the country. But when I went there, the funny thing is there was some electives I had to take to fill in before I could proceed in more advanced architecture classes. And there was one course that said intro to video. And I said, oh, let's just for old time's sake, because I used to do videos for classes in high school and present them. When people would just come up with a piece of paper and present, I would do a full blown video. And I just said, okay, just for all time's sake, I'll take this video course, and went ahead and took it. And I said to myself, what am I doing? How can I be turning away from this? This is crazy. And so I told my parents, I'm sorry, mom and dad, I can't do architecture. And they said, okay, come on back. We'll figure it out. So from there, I did 1 year in a community college. And then after that, I went to Academy of Art University based on an advertisement on a TV commercial, and flew over there and visited the place, loved the campus. And that's where I got my degree in motion pictures and television.
Wow. So were you, did you kind of keep this secretive to your family, the idea that you wanted to be a filmmaker? Was that something that you wanted, that you always wanted? You kind of kept it hidden from them? Or so like when you came back, was that like the first time they heard about it, or were they always supportive of?
They'd seen me make a bunch of videos before, but I didn't openly express it. I didn't talk about it too much. And I was taking architecture classes in high school.
Yeah.
But I did have a girlfriend that I would talk to her while we're watching a movie and say, look, the next shot, it's going to be from the outside. And she's like, and it happens. And she's like, how did you know that? I said, well, that's what I would do, because to show like we're leaving the scene, the two characters are talking about saying their goodbyes. That's the appropriate way so we get a distance from them.
You pull them back.
Yes, exactly.
Because we're leaving them, you know. So by bringing them back, yeah, that's great. And I love that. I love the fact that like it's always been like from Citizen Kane, and then it just kind of just germinated this seed, and it was like you just were destined to be here in filmmaking. Because I mean, from what I've seen from your stuff, I'm like, I can already tell, like, you have an eye for it. Like it's not just the angles you use are very, are different than most student filmmakers that I see. That's something that I've noticed. What was the most unique bit of knowledge you received from training at the Academy of Arts University?
A bit of knowledge was one of my teachers in I'm a big fan of, acknowledging the people who have taught me, mentored me, supported me. And so one of my teachers, the first day in class, he had us stand on a chair and look at the perspective as if we were the lens of a camera. And he said, look at the world, look how different it is from up here. And then he got us to lay on the ground. He says, now look at the world, look at how different it is from here. Right? So he said, it's very important where you place the camera, because it changes the perspective of the audience watching it. And he really showed us how to construct a short film in a way where you have a setup, rising conflict, a false climax, and then things dip down again, and then you have the real climax, all in a 5-minute short film that can be produced. And from there, I started to just understand, conflict and how to create that roller coaster ride for an audience.
Wow, that's such a cool way to show you, just by having you stand on a chair and looking at different perspectives. For anybody that is a filmmaker or wants to learn about it, all you got to do is go outside, stand on a chair, look up at the sky, sit on the ground. You'll see different perspectives. But I love that he started you guys right off with that, so that you're seeing, it's like, look, see how this is the camera. You're the camera. I was just adding an instrument to reflect even more. It's always you. It's just the camera is the tool to bring that vision out. So I love that. That's brilliant. Wonderful advice. Now, in 2006, you started your production company, Shining Light Pictures. Talk about creating that production company, because you were very, very early into the process.
Right. That was interesting because I mean, after graduating from college, and I had interned at Paramount Pictures before, and on a TV show, and it wasn't for me. I could tell it was a giant machine, and I said, I'm just going to get swallowed in this. I'm going to lose myself, lose my identity, lose my purpose. It was such a big machine, and I saw it as a rigid thing. Nothing wrong with that. It's the studio system. Well, it just didn't feel right for me. And they had offered me a job uh, before I had left, and I didn't want to do it. And television was not something I really had interest in. To this day, television's I don't have an interest in it. So
Interesting.
but when I left college, I got a job as a office PA, and then I quickly rose up to be an office manager. And this is at a behind the scenes DVD production company. This is when they used to make the DVDs, the special features for this company did it for like Transformers, all the Disney 10-year anniversaries, like the Born Identity series. And I just wanted to understand the inner workings of a company because I knew that I was going to have my own business one day because I had been on set so many times before. And so the administrative side was unknown to me. So I did that for a year. And then I realized, because I was talking to my coworkers who were 10 years ahead of me. So I'm 22, something like 23. They were 33, that age range. And I said, so this is it. You're in entertainment. This is what you want to do, right? Like you're living your dream. Every single one of them, Justin, I kid you not, every single one of them said, no, I want to be making documentaries. I want to be, writing TV shows. I want to be directing movies. I want to be producing movies. Shook me to my core. I said, wow, this is not the way. I'm going to get swallowed up here again. I'm going to lose my identity, lose my purpose. And so I left there after a year. And I decided, since I had not written my first feature-length screenplay yet, I said, this is a big problem, because that to me is the way to get a movie made, to direct a movie, write your own screenplay, attach yourself, have people read it, want to make it, but say, I'm attached to it. And so I left, I got a job at a data entry position, something that was just a no-brainer, that was not, 10 hours a day and commuting 3 hours. And it was like a health insurance company. And I said, in 1 year, I'm going to write my first screenplay, finish it, and then I'm going to leave this job. And literally to the day that happened, I had finished the screenplay. I was making plans to leave. Then I got a job as a commercial producer at a company. But from there, the guy turned out to be a crook, and I had to leave after like 2 months. And I said, well, he can do it. Like, why don't I do it? I just start my own company then. And so
Interesting.
That's what I did. And I got clients like the American Red Cross, the United Way. And I enjoyed it because it was like nonprofits that I was, making contributions in terms of, supporting their cause and getting paid in the process. But at the same time, I just kept writing. I kept writing, kept funding my own projects, my own short films, because going back to that fear of not being good enough, to make movies that would impact people. I wanted to make sure I kept honing my craft, kept writing screenplays to get to the point where I felt secure enough that I would not make a B movie. My greatest fear in life is making a B movie. It's not dying. It's not getting a disease. It's not public speaking. It is making a B movie. That is my greatest fear. And so
you're like James Cameron. You didn't want to do Piranha 2, The Spawning. Because I mean, through that's what led to him to do the original Terminator. He's like, I don't want anyone to see me as this thing. I love the fact that this goes back to like one of your previous podcasts you did, where you said that you wanted to work with people who do it. And when you were I can see what happened there at the DVD place, which seems fascinating because I love DVDs and I love the special features. So it's so cool that you have that like inside track of, oh, this is how they did it. But you were around a bunch of people that were like, they gave up on their dream, and you didn't want to be the person who gave up on his dream. So you kept coming in, and you reminded me a lot of Elon Musk too, where like he went in and it was just like, he came in with his resume. Nobody saw him. He's like, screw this. I'm just going to start my own company. And that's kind of what you did. It's a little different than that, but I love that because you were able to see that. Also, the fact that you left that, Paramount, they were going to give you a nice job, but you knew it's going to stifle you creatively. You know, uh, we're jumping around a little bit in some of my questions, but when I was doing my research, you talked about you bought this pen that you wrote. You were going to write, sign your first. Talk a little bit about the pen.
Oh yeah. I had heard from other people who have succeeded in their goals that
Jim Carrey.
It's helpful. Yeah, it's helpful if you set something aside, and it's a visual reminder and a goal to continually strive towards, right? To stay centered, stay on this path. And so I bought this really fancy pen. I don't remember how much I paid for it, and I got it engraved. I put shining light pictures on the box. You open it up, it has my name on the pen, and literally I did not use it. Like I'd never used it once, and I just kept it, and I would just look at it and say, one day I'm going to sign this when I get a movie made, and it's going to be for an investor who puts money into my movie, because I didn't want to just go and make a movie for like 50,000, 10,000, like some people do. I had no interest in that, I wanted to build myself up, build up my portfolio to the point where I could, raise a substantial amount of money. And that pen just kept driving me. I said, I have to use this one day. And I think it was I had it for maybe 8 years. So, but I finally used it. It was this year that I was able to sign and receive investment funds for my first movie to direct.
So you had it engraved and everything, even before, and didn't use it at all. That shows a lot of discipline right there. I think that needs to be stated, how much discipline it takes to have a pen made, engraved, production company on, and not use it. I mean, and then just let it sit because you trust the process. And I think that's kind of what it shows is you trusted the process of that. And when I was doing my research, I saw that. It's like, oh, we got to talk about that. Is that's everything. I think more people don't realize that, like, having something like that is sending a sign to the universe, God, whatever you believe, that I believe that this can come and this can be manifested. Instead of just saying, I'm going to do this, you put something tangible there. I love that story. It's fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about your film thesis that I watched, Blood Ties. I thought this was great, and you didn't even direct it. You were the producer, you were the writer, and you edited it. I've noticed that you do a lot of the editing. Do you enjoy the editing process?
I love editing. Yeah, but
really,
I only love editing when it's one of my projects. Like I don't edit for other people. So,
yeah.
Again, it's to hone my craft. It's to get my hands in a lot of different positions, so I have a full understanding that if I hired someone for that position, I know exactly their mindset, their mentality, their thought process in that position, and how to communicate with them. So, but yeah, Blood Ties was interesting because my buddy Julian Gillen, he's still a close friend of mine to this day. He's not in entertainment anymore, but I still consult with him on my projects just to get feedback. And he was unsure about just working with other people. He just trusted me a lot. And so it was literally like a 2-man crew for that film. And we had built miniature sets. We had filmed in his apartment. We had put boards up like it was a pier, like over water. And
you did that with only 2 people?
We did that with only 2 people. He was the director,
that's amazing.
And I was everything else. And literally we shot on black and white film on a Bolex camera, which is, that's the crank. You have to crank the camera until it stops. And then you pull the lever back and then you press the button and then it rolls the film at 24 frames a second. And I would rack focus myself, and I would pan and tilt, do all that myself. And yeah, it was strange, but we did it, and we did it over a long period of time. It was not the ideal production experience, because I think we literally shot like 40 days or something like that crazy thing, because it was so slow, and it was,
Yeah.
and I did all the lighting, and I did everything, just, and he helped move the equipment here and there. And we just had a bunch of actors in 1950s costumes, the gangsters, the singers, femme fatales, and all that, and fake guns. And yeah, we won. We actually won a special jury prize at our college. And the funny thing is, the 2 years before that, when I happened to walk into an event, and it was like the school was giving out awards for filmmakers. And I'm like, oh my God, the school gives out awards? I said, in 2 years, I'm going to be up on that stage. I'm going to win an award. And
I love this. We're seeing this pattern of like,
yeah,
in 2 years, I'm going to do this. 1 year, I'm going to do this. 10 months, I'm going to do this. I love that about you. And you actually do it. Yeah. So many people say that they don't actually do it. And it's, sorry, I interrupted you. I just had to interject there.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I even wrote this story, and I submitted it to Chicken Soup for the Soul, one of their books, and they accepted it as one of their 101 stories that are inspirational. So that was actually my first book publication.
Wow. Dude, that's amazing. I just want to tell you what I thought when I saw it. It reminded me. It was kind of like a mix of Gangster Squad, the video game Heavy Rain, and what else did I write here? Sin City. Because it had that whole vibe. But the fact that you did that with only 2 people, and I thought it was great. I loved Blood Ties because I love film noir, and I love the aspects you did. I mean, just the very beginning with the knife and everything. I mean, that's just, Chinatown,
Yeah.
the knife right in the nose. It's just so I mean, right there, even in your first film, in some ways, that has going through, some of, I was like, wow, you already have a really good take on that. Next thing that really impressed me was every 15 minutes, a teenager dies. I love the edit. I love the editing of that with Mad World. I like that there's something very unsettling about it that just came over it, because I assume some of it was stock footage, and then some of it was, the actors. I mean, I couldn't tell exactly how that was constructed, but I mean, I just remember looking at it, I was like, I don't even want to look at the screen. And that's usually a good sign. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, that was commissioned by, it was a high school, Newbury Park High, and they work in conjunction with the California Highway Patrol. And it's a program where you actually, they put this on an event at school, and then they showed this video. And the requirement is we have to produce the video in 24 hours. And so everything you see there was shot by me and 2 other videographers, and then I had to do an overnight edit. So that was all, in 24 hours I had to deliver it. And the crazy thing is that when I was editing it, my computer shut down. I had the Mac with a big silver tower before, and it shut down 7 times. And this is I was already done editing it. I was trying to output it, and it kept shutting down. And I was shocked that I was not going to be able to deliver this. Luckily, was able to make it work, and brought it to the school, and the entire school saw it, and people were crying and everything. And yeah, it's gotten a lot of it's gotten maybe 400 some 500 some thousand views. There is music in there that I do not own. I did not get copyright for, but YouTube allows it because it's for educational purposes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And there's a lot of comments that say, from students, they watch it and they say, this is one of the best that I've seen of this every 15 minutes. And the way I did it was I took a documentary approach. I didn't want to direct these non-actors that are students.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, in the early scene where there's a party, when I showed up, there was like 30 kids there. And I said, you know, you guys, you party. You do what you want. I'm not here. You just don't talk to me. I'm just going to be moving around the camera. Don't acknowledge me. You guys are having a party. And so I gave them the permission to do what they wanted, not what I wanted, right? And the funny thing is, they took beer bottles that were empty that we placed there for props. They filled it up with water, and they started drinking it and then playing the beer pong and like jumping on couches and all these things. They were free to do all these things. That's the moment that my directing style changed, because I was not a good director before this. I was very heavy-handed, and I would treat actors like not robots, but I would tell them result directing, which is like, you be angry here, you be sad here. I just didn't get it as a director. You know,
You've heard the story of was it Spielberg when he was doing Schindler's List, and Liam Neeson, he says it's not something that he likes, because he's just being told every time, like, okay, do this, do that, do those. Like, okay, what do you need me there? I'm just a puppet.
Liam Neeson,
but that's
he's telling me how to breathe.
Yeah,
in the smoking scene, with the smoking, when he's like, you know, like, I know.
But you can't help it, because you just, you know, you're not doing it to, you know, hurt the actor. You think you're helping, but in some ways it's like self-sabotage and stuff. And I love that. Yeah, you just said, hey, just go play, and through that, the scene came alive because you took the gloves off instead of saying, okay, now you stand here and you do here. Okay, don't look at the camera. Don't look at the, you know, you just said, play around and we'll film it. And you saw the creativity they brought to it. And it became, I think that's probably why it works, because yeah, I know they're non-actors, but it has that documentary feel. So with the firefighters, was that something you shot, or is that stock footage?
I shot that. Yeah. Got into the truck, filmed it. Yeah. Yeah. The ambulance, I got into that as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought you were just using stock foot. Wow. I'm even more impressed.
It all has to be planned out in advance. I even picked out all the music in advance.
Yeah.
You know,
because when they're breaking the car to get in, it feels very lifelike. Like you can hear the sound of it. It just like, it's weird. People don't realize that, like when somebody's stuck in a vehicle, the vehicle, you no longer think of it as a car. You just think of it as, this is something we got to get somebody out of. And you start to see vehicles or things like that as just what they are, like things. And that's one of the things that kind of like jumped out at me. Is just like, it's a car, but you know, they got to get through there, and it's just a door, you know, like that just kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah, they're not acting. They're really not acting. They had to use the jaws of life and open the door and do what they've done hundreds of times. And that's what I wanted. I wanted the documentary. I wanted it to feel real. And that's why when people have watched it, like they would just.
It does. Yeah. It does feel real. I told you, it's hard to watch. Especially the music. I mean, when I heard the music, the first thing I'm thinking is Donnie Darko, and then I'm watching it, and then it's just going. It's like, oh wow, look at this. And as I told you, I thought it was stock footage because of the way you filmed it, you know, with the shots. But now I know that like you actually shot that. So that's, once again, hats off to you again.
Thank you.
One of the last films I wanted to talk about till we get to the big ones, artwork. I liked what you did with that, just the colors and the, you know, some of the looks that you brought to it. It had that romantic comedy feel to it, but it also had this this beauty to it, the pinks that you used, and even the speaking style. I don't know if that was intentionally, but the speaking style really jumped out at me. Like they're speaking very, you know, kind of, but I was like, this works. Can you talk a little bit about that film, artwork?
Well, artwork to me is bittersweet because I
knew you were going to say
in my inexperience, I did not have a sound person on set for most of it, and that was shot on color film. We literally did 1 or 2 takes for every shot that you see, because it gets pricey. I mean, that film cost that short film cost 15,000, and Blood Ties cost, I think it was like 25,000, something like that. Because film's expensive, you know. And yeah, we had to do all additional dialogue recording afterwards. I did not have the directing ability or enough of the nuance to get the performances back, because the performances were great on set, but it just wasn't, the sound wasn't recorded.
And see, I
And
think that added to it because it gives it this stifled way of talking. It reminds me of kind of the way David Lynch films work. When they talk, there's these awkward pauses. And now I realize it's because of the ADR, but I think it enhances the film. It gives it a different feel to it. I see what you're saying, that like from the performances that it was coming. So maybe it was like the mix of the performances mixed with the ADR gave it this unique thing. But I could see what you mean. It was bittersweet because you're like, I have to change everything. We can't use any of it. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, what I love about it is that the first thing that I really shot on film like that, besides just little test things for class, was that, I mean, I had all the shots planned out. I'd storyboarded everything. Even back then, I made sure I storyboarded. And I love the way the shots are, the way that the story flows. And I wish it was better, but I also took the approach of Japanese anime, where Hayao Miyazaki is a huge influence on me. And I was going for that type of style where there's a certain innocence to it. There's a certain hopefulness, and there's some heartache as well. And because his films, like, nobody ever dies in his films, in his animations, except some of the action ones, of course, but a lot of times it's like there's a romance or a drama, and it's just so absorbing. And sometimes there's not a lot of conflict and not a lot of drama, but it's just, I'm completely absorbed in his storytelling ability. And like, I just think, how do you do that? So
I think that's what I was made subconsciously. I was pulling up. I'm a big Miyazaki film fan as well. And when you say that, it's like, okay, now it makes sense. And I think that spirit came through. Is this Miyazaki? I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't look like anything. I know how a lot of filmmakers would shoot that, and the way you shot it. Now that I know it's you were inspired by Miyazaki, it's like it even adds more to it. Because it does have that. It has that, that feel that. I'm trying to think of a good way, like Kiki's Delivery Service.
yeah.
Something like that, where it's just like things are happening. It's it's not Grave of the Fireflies, but it's
Oh, God.
Yeah.
You're going from fun, whimsical to like complete tragedy.
Probably one of the most saddest animes you've ever seen. Moving on though, I loved Our Story as well. As you can tell, I pretty much liked everything. It had that Wes Anderson feel to it, to me. The way you did it. Can you talk a little bit about? And I love her name's Eileen, and you got "Come On, Eileen" in there as well. Talk a little bit about that, or is this a film that's bittersweet as well?
No, this was an absolute joy to make. It was a very close friend of mine who's like, I consider her like a sister. I've known her since junior high, and her brother and her whole family. And she was getting married, and she had asked me, Joe, would you mind like doing a story about me and my husband, about how we met, and we could show it at our wedding? And I thought, sure, would be happy to. So wrote the script, developed it with them, and just figured out what their quirks were in terms of when they were dating early on, and put some of that into the story. Yeah, things like he felt useful when he was fixing things for her, and so that's why you have it in the story. She's trying to find a way to spend more time with them, so she breaks things in the house, so he would come rushing over and fix them. And had her friend Eileen, the actual real life friend, Eileen and her husband in there, who I've known as well since junior high. And it was just a great experience. And there could have been more drama. I could see where I could have had a better setup to lead to a payoff. But it's, you know, that's, again, that's just, I wasn't as good in terms of storytelling as I am now, because there was a point where, and I'll show this later, that I took a screenwriting course that completely evolved the way that I write as a screenwriter.
Yeah.
So this is before that. And I think it's good, it's nice, it's fun. And it was the first time where I had such a massive audience of 400 people at a wedding. And that gave me a lot of fulfillment to show it. And people really enjoyed it and just came up to me and just thanked me for doing it.
Yeah. I don't think if you had more conflict though, it would have, because if it's for a wedding like that, it's gotta kind of be light to begin with, you know.
Well, it wasn't
You add too much to it.
It wasn't necessarily conflict. What's missing in there is if she would have told her friend or her mom and said, you know, I've always wanted to be taken to Paris. I've always wanted to go on a trip somewhere. That little
So starting
setup,
off with like a conflict of something.
yes.
Yeah. The seed of that. Okay. Yeah. That would
Like none of my boyfriends take me overseas on any trips, but this guy does. But even though he's doing it virtually at first, right? Which is, it's a downer. You know, she goes there in a different way virtually, but then at the very end, the four of them, they're, you know, as a group, they show footage when they're in Paris, you know. So
did you go with them to film that?
I did not.
You went?
I did not. No, Eileen, her friend Eileen filmed most of that.
That was pretty good too. Wow, that's great. All right, so now let's move on to the one that I want to talk about. Fugitive Zero. This has won 55 awards. I was kind of blown away. I was like sitting there, I was like, oh wow, this doesn't feel like a short film. This feels like a feature film. This feels grander than what it is. And I know it's only, you know, 2 locations, but the way you just did it from the beginning to then coming to the end, it had this larger scope around it that you don't see with a lot of, I don't see with a lot of short films, where it just feels lived in. It feels like these characters have been there for a while. Where did the idea for Fugitive Zero come from?
Oh, that's interesting. Because I know someone who had an issue where it was like entrapment by the police, and they were caught, and there was surveillance there and all that. And I thought, wow, this is interesting, you know. And it kind of just it happened a long time ago, and it kind of just percolated in my brain. And I knew this person was a good person, just made a mistake doing, you know, just writing stuff, you know, online and things like that, and got caught by the police. And so I went ahead and I thought, well, how do you really know if someone is good, or they've stayed the same, or if they've gotten worse if they were in a prison system, you know, besides just like being interviewed and then having their time served, you know, like where are they at morally? And so I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to actually test people before they come out of the prison system, before they're released to society, and give them a series of tests to challenge them, challenge their morality, and see what decisions they would make. And from there, I figured out, oh, there must be a person that creates this program, gets funding for it, and has to test it out. And this is the early stage of this testing it out. And so Fugitive Zero, he is zero because he is like the test subject. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting? Because if he did not affect anyone's life except for the family members, like why does the rest of society care? Except for, you know, maybe he could do it to other people, right? So the person who he's most directly affected is the mother of someone that he killed. And if I made her the person that decides, not the judge, not the jury, if she decides if he gets to be released or not, after he passes all the moral tests, then right, then there's a sense of like healing that takes place for her, closure for her, and for him as well, because it's like for him, he's like, I've been accepted by the victim that I caused harm to, the mother, you know, so there is a way that both of them can heal. But of course, it gets sabotaged, you know. So
Yeah.
and the way that this came about was then I wrote it a full screenplay, 120 pages or something like that, 118 pages, and won an award for it. And I thought, oh wow, people see value in this. And I have a screenwriting career coach. Her name is Lee Jessup. I met with her, and I said, I want to direct this as a movie. And she said, Joe, if you want to direct this, you have to do the short film version of it, because this is like a bigger budget. It's in the millions. And I was like, oh my God. When she said that, I said, oh my God, because I knew she was right. But two, I knew this was going to be the biggest budgeted short film that I had ever done.
Yeah.
And I would have to raise money for it. And I didn't really have much money at the time.
And you
But
did crowdfunding.
I did, yeah, I did a crowdfunding for partial amount of it. And I just said, I have to do it. And that was it. And I just found a way to do it, to make this a reality.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting concept. I mean, when I was looking at it, yeah, I mean, it is an interesting idea. Instead of having them sit there and go, what do you, do we think this person's rehabilitated? It's kind of like that Cabin in the Woods Minority Report type of, feel of like, well, what if we actually tested them to see where it goes? That was one of the questions I was going to ask you is, did you have a bigger script already in mind? Because it felt like it was a part of something much bigger. And you already answered that with saying that you pretty much condensed it into a short film, almost as a demo of like, here's what it is. I mean, that's kind of what they did with Deadpool. Nobody wanted to make it. Nobody wanted to do an R-rated superhero movie. And they just filmed like a little bit of it, and then it leaked, and everybody's like, "Oh no, now we got to do it," And it's kind of what I see happen, because it does feel like it's a part of it. So there is a full screenplay for it.
Yes, yeah, and I left it on a cliffhanger. I left the short film purposely in a way that it doesn't close the loop, because the guy, he drops the device, and it's like, oh no, he needed that to clear his name. And what's going to happen? I wanted to leave the audience on the question of what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the best way to leave it. Keep going until the film ends. Here we go. This happens. Now we're going to here. Then this happens. It's like, oh, he's out, but he left the thing. Who's going to find it? How's he going to clear his name? It's I love it. And that's the best MacGuffin you can find, is when it's something that the characters are so developed that they're chasing something, but them, so you care about what happens to them, as opposed to, okay, got to get from point A to point B. And that's what I liked about it. You had a lot of character development in the short time that they're there. Like, we get who they are. And it's, I love it. I think it's amazing. Now, okay, that about does it for part 1. As I said, stay tuned for part 2, where we will discuss Joe Lamb's first feature film, The Fetus. You can find Joe Lamb on Facebook at Joe Lamb. You can find him on filmfreeway.com, LinkedIn, as well as his website, shininglightpictures.com. That's Shining Light, singular, pictures.com. I would like to thank Joe Lamb for doing this interview. And as always, you can find me at Justin Yance, and I will see you next time on the DMF